IVM.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast supported by Pragati, a flagship media initiative of the Takshashila Institution. We're a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like to bring a fresh perspective to Indian affairs and an Indian perspective to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of All Things Policy. I am Kingshuk Saha, a researcher at the Takshashila Institution. With me is my colleague Dr. Nithiyanandam Yogeswaran, a professor at the Takshashila Institution. Today we'll discuss China's mega dam that it is planning to build at Yarlung Tsang Po at Medog County before entering India's Arunachal that he has written in his article. Hello Nitya, it is great to have you in All Things Policy.
Hello, Kingshu. It's good to be with you again. And yes, today we would be getting into the China's Megadam project, which is planned on its 14th five-year plan. And to give a brief about this project, China is building an ambitious mega dam in a river which is a transboundary river, which starts from Tibet and then it flows into India, and then it reaches Bangladesh, and then finally it gets into the sea. And the importance of this dam is this is going to be the world largest dam if it gets completed, and it is 3 times the size of existing world largest dam. If you may know, the world largest dam is Three Gorges Dam so far, which is also in China, and this dam would be the 3 times the capacity of the existing world largest dam. And it is very close to the Indian border in Arunachal Pradesh. In fact, it is just 22 kilometers away from our Arunachal Pradesh border.
Nitya, what you said, it is 3 times larger than the Three Gorge Dam, and it is built near Indian border and near Arunachal. Like, what seems interesting and fascinating is that terrain is something. It's a remote area, and this dam is being built in a rugged terrain with two of the highest mountain of Eastern Himalaya, and that is Namchi Barwa and Gayala Peri. And the proposed dam seems will span 13 miles in width and 3 miles in depth with a deep canyon. But building a dam of this magnitude requires a state of art technology. So my question is, do you think time will only tell, but what do you think? Is it a technological marvel or disaster in making?
Well, this dam is chosen to be at that place for a reason of extremely high potential in hydroelectric power, because river Yarlung Tsang Po, I said it's a perennial river which starts from the glaciers in Tibet, and then it is flowing at a very high speed, very high rate in the area where it is known as U Bend, the Greater U Bend. The Greater U Bend is an area where the river changes its direction towards the Indian side and enters into Arunachal Pradesh. Why it is planned technically over there? It's because the place naturally has that depth variation of close to 2,000 meters. And it is also known as the world deepest canyon. And because of these natural factors, and with a huge potential of hydroelectric power, this place has been identified by China. Now, coming into the point, whether is it feasible to construct a dam in this rugged mountainous terrain? If you look at the previous dams built by China, whether it is Three Gorges Dam or any other dams which are built, it's always shown the exceptional engineering capabilities. And when it comes to Three Gorges Dam, even the terrains on the upper states are modified a bit and made it suitable for the world biggest dam. Now, will that be possible in the same terrain? I doubt a bit, because it has a different system compared to other dams which are built by China. And as you said, very less people lives over there, and it is on a remote area. However, the potential is there. So that's the main attraction for constructing a dam. And we have to wait and see whether this is feasible or will it be realized. If you look at it, This plan of building a dam is not a new thing. It has been planned by China for several years, but in the recent 5-year plan, it has specified that it will be implemented hopefully before 2035. So that is something where we are all looking forward for the engineering marvel if it is going to happen in that place.
I agree, like with modern technology and all those, like, and given Chinese track record, like if you see from like the Great Wall of China to Three Gorge Dam, China had been always building colossal structures. But now, as you have pointed about that Three Gorge Dam, if you see after it was constructed, so there had been major issue of pollution, silt accumulation, and there had been an ecological disaster sort of, because it's changed the water beds and it had impacted the flora fauna, and also it has displaced large number of people. So I think in the present project, one thing is that where it is being built, it is a sparsely populated place. But despite that, like there are concern about that from, if you look at the ecological angle, like while I was going through your paper, I've seen like you have mentioned that is a ecological hotspot with so much unique flora and fauna. So how you see, what would be the impact? Because across the world we have seen, like after a point of time, when big dams are built, there have been some negative effects. And when someone is building a dam of this magnitude, so the risks are much higher. So if you can please elaborate a bit.
Yes, this is quite common for any dam construction project, and especially what happens in dam. We are restricting the natural flow of water, natural flow of sediments which has been gathered from the upstream part of the river, and then it is actually used as a fertile soil in the delta regions and in the most part of the lower riparian states. In case of Three Gorges Dam, there are a lot of challenges still in place despite the dam has completed several years ago. I would say the dam has not reached its purpose because the dam was originally envisaged for minimizing the flood. If you ask whether the flood is controlled right now, I would say no. It is unable to control the flood, and in addition, it has caused a lot of ecological impacts. It has altered the water flow in the lower riparian areas, and it has impacted the species. Like how it impacts the species: when you control the natural flow of water which goes on a specific period, in a specific rate, the species, the people, and the practices associated with it or dependent on the water which flows in that region will get impacted. In case of Mekong River basin of China, a lot of species has been extincted, and then lot of million of people has been displaced from that lower regions. And in fact, some artificial floods has been created by releasing water on the unrelated pattern, or you can say water in an unexpected period. So this is going to be common in any dam, but the scale in which we are looking at, whether it's a Three Gorges Dam or it's a new dam to be in the Medong Basin, Medong County, this impact is going to be high. And in case of other dams, whether it is if it is Three Gorges Dam of China, the impact will be on the Chinese land itself because it is located in the center of the Chinese territory. Whereas the Mekong River Basin, the dams constructed on Mekong River Basin impacts the region, local countries, lower riparian countries, which are Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Thailand, because it's a transboundary issue. And the one which we are talking is in Medong County, and it is just 20 kilometers away from the Arunachal Pradesh. Now, Arunachal Pradesh is identified as one of the ecological hotspot in India. The other one is in Western Ghats. Now, since the area it enters in Indian territory is highly rugged mountainous system with lot of ecological importance, it has rich species of plants and animals. Now, if any of this pattern is altered, if there is a change in pattern of water flow, if the silt has been reduced, all this will contribute to the disaster in that region. It is not only the ecological disaster, pollution based disaster, and so on. We may even get the trigger of earthquakes, massive landslides in the whole Himalayan ecosystem, which is known to be a fragile Himalayan ecosystem.
Dr. Nitya, the proposed dam, like while reading your article, I found, is 60 gigawatt proposed capacity. So this is mind boggling. Is this the one of the main reason, like, energy, the main reason for building dam? We know, like, China is the second largest economy in the world and the largest energy consumer. So it has a huge dependency on oil, which it mostly imports. And there have been always a vulnerability in China about this energy, because there are always a fear that their oil supply would be halted in either of these two choking points, in the Gulf of Hormuz or State of Malacca. And also it had been seen, like, despite having number of rivers in China, their natural water resources is limited. A major part of the country, if you look at the western side, doesn't have access to water. So, like, if it is like for energy, how do they plan to distribute this energy, if you can tell?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. If you look at the China's ambitions to be self-reliant, or China, on the other word, I would say China is looking for meeting its own energy requirements through renewable energy sources, and they wanted to achieve their net neutrality in their energy consumption by 2060, which is technically 10 years before the target of India. And for achieving that, they require the utilization of their all the renewable energy sources. They wanted to tap the huge clean energy source which is exist in Tibet. When I say clean energy source, that includes solar, wind, as well as hydroelectric power, which is available in Tibet. It is not yet exploited to the level it can, but currently China plan to exploit that, and then they wanted to use it for the rest of the region, which is still demanding more energy requirement. The current Tibet region may not require such a huge quantity of electricity which is being produced, but the electricity would be required for different parts of China where it may be more useful for the larger kind of people and to help achieving the target. The proposed dam has a capacity of estimated capability, or you can say capacity of 60,000 megawatt. And even if it able to produce 50% of its estimated capacity, that would still largely serve the purpose because it still would be the largest dam in the world.
But to it says that when you said it will, even it was 50%, but it is mostly produced in the western region and the major demand is in the southern region in China. That is one part. How they will transfer this energy, one aspect. And second aspect, like as you said, like about clean energy. So if you can tell a bit about it. China is a market leader or a world leader in clean energy, especially in solar and all. Chinese companies have literally brought down the prices per unit of solar energy. So, and how do you see this play into the existing geopolitics? Because as China is a world leader in solar energy, but one of the key ingredient in solar would be the silver dust that they get it from Japan. So in this geopolitical context, do you think China can still would be the leader, or how you see this happening?
I see it in a way like they still wanted to be the leader in the renewable energy production, and more, as I said, they wanted to meet their requirements through this clean energy. Where for a larger audience, when I mean clean energy is an energy which you are producing through solar, wind, hydroelectric, geothermal, and so on, without using coal, atomic powers, and so on. So this clean energy potential is exist. So that's like what is harm in you tapping it if the potential is exist in your own territory. But the challenge only comes when it is at a place where it is much closer to a transboundary. It The challenge only comes if it is in a place which is much closer to your neighbor, and any of the disaster which cause will impact your neighbor. So in that case, this dam has got its prominence, though China has been claiming this is for their own energy requirement, and they are not going to alter the flow of pattern of water and so on. However, this is becoming a concern for India, as we fear it could be used as a potential weapon against us.
Tsang Po, that in India we know as Brahmaputra, is not only one of the largest river in the world, but also one of the vital river system in India. Over a million people in Northeast India and Bangladesh depend on it for their livelihood. What would be the impact on India and Bangladesh if this dam is being built?
Yeah, this Yarlung Tsang Po, the river originates from Angsi Glacier near Mount Kailash in Tibet, and in extent for about 3,000 kilometers before it enters India as the Brahmaputra in Arunachal Pradesh. This tributaries traverse through muddy terrain and jungles, and in fact, when it reaches Assam, it combines with Loget and Dibang River before it enters into Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, it is known as Jamuna River. So ultimately, it joins the Teesta and Ganges River and empties in Bay of Bengal at the end. As you said, it has been a lifeline for millions of people in their plains, and it encompasses an area of 570,000 square kilometers, and approximately 130 million people are dependent on it. If you change any of this pattern, or if you alter any of these regular patterns which are dependent on this water availability, India will largely get affected. And more than India, Bangladesh would be suffering more, because Bangladesh is one of a country which is known for huge climate change impact. It is already suffering from climate change, for rising sea levels, for floods, and many other aspects. If you combine that with this new process, the whole region would be in more stress compared to the natural stress, or the existing stress which is created by the climate change.
Stay tuned to All Things Policy. We'll be right back after a short commercial break.
One fun fact, like, so monsoon is approaching, and when you said Yamuna, so there is always a contest or dispute between people from West Bengal and Bangladesh when they said which Ilish is better. So Bangladeshis say that Ilish from Yamuna is taste better, and while from Indian side they say it is from Ganga. So that was the fun fact. So I'll go to the next question. So what are the dynamics between upper and lower European countries? So we are concerned about China taking advantage as an upper European state. But when we look at India, like, we have a long standing, dispute in between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu about water on Kaveri water issue for a long time. And also, like, when we look between India and Bangladesh, Tista River water sharing is a dispute. So, like, can you explain what is the dynamics and how India can move forward? Because if you look at our own track record, both internally and externally, it is not that great. So, like, if you will explain this.
Well, the term upper riparian and lower riparian defines in this way, like whenever a river originates, the place in which it is originated and the area which is associated to that, or the landmass which are associated to that, comes under the upper riparian region. If it is a country, we call it as upper riparian country. And thereafter, where the river flows and where the river reaches the other water body or meets up new river, those places are known as lower riparian region, or if it is a country, we call it as lower riparian country. Within a country, we call it as upper riparian states and lower riparian states. That's an example you have given it, the challenge between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, where Karnataka is a place where the river originates, and then it's known as, and the large amount of catchment stays within Karnataka, that is known as upper Riparian region. And then the water flows through a state and then finally ends up in a sea. That place is called the lower Riparian state. Now, the disputes are always exist between this, whether it is a river basin in within India, whether the river basin between countries. It is quite common. This also exists in Indus Basin. It also exists in Zambezi Basin in an African continent, and so on. Now, how to sort out, or how to amicably sort out the water challenges exist between two riparian stakeholders? The best way to do is to establish transparency between them by sharing water flow, water catchment information with your lower riparian partner. This is very important, because whenever there is a huge chance of water accumulation in an upper riparian state, it is a time for lower riparian states to get alerted, because the dams may not able to get hold of it, and the water would be released in a flash. If you have the good data sharing practice between the two parties, we can avoid flood and we can plan many things in a better way. But in reality, this is not happening, because at times water has been controlled due to several reasons, and because of that, the lower riparian states always ends in a situation to please the upper riparian state or to fight with an upper riparian state, whereas upper riparian states always have the higher hold on this, because the water originates from there, and then they can do whatever activity they wanted, whether it's more utilization for agriculture, where they can build dams for electricity generation, they can use it for more industrial purposes, and so on. So this is naturally an advantage to upper riparian region and a disadvantage to the lower riparian region.
Can you cite one successful model or something similar where some there had been a framework of understanding that we can study so that we can resolve our own dispute?
Well, there are successful model, but the way you see it as success or failure depends on which state you belongs to. If I quote, the Indus Basin Treaty is considered as one of the successful treaty which exists between two transboundary states, and which exists between India and Pakistan, and the water sharing has been happening peacefully for several years. However, the lower riparian states demands on the water flow and their expectation of quality of water which is flowing on this region has been changing over a period of time, and thus people sometimes approach for the change in treaty or the need to revisit a treaty. This is somehow better compared to a transboundary river which does not have a treaty. The dam which we are talking about in Medog County, even there's no actual treaty exists between India and China, though there are several talks on this Brahmaputra, but there's no clear treaty which exists on it. Because of this, there's a challenge when any of the mischiefs happens in this project, or if any of the further alterations happens, there's a little way to sort it out amicably, and one has to both the parties has to approach an external party to resolve these issues.
I think I agree with you what you said about the Indus Treaty. Despite its shortcoming, I think it has seen through three wars and one skirmish. Still, in this water treaty is in place, despite number of shortcomings that need to be addressed, as you have pointed out, with number of changes. And another point you brought, I think that would be relevant for policy stakeholder. We need a greater interaction with China on this issue, because this is not only about India and China as a country or as a political entity, but it has an influence or impact on the whole ecology of this region. So going forward, that would be one, like there should be a greater dialogue between ecologist, hydrologist, and those who are expert in this field to move forward. So having said that, I will ask you another question, like, because with dam now increasingly, as we see in this today's extremely charged up and volatile geopolitical context, that everything has a strategic element, be it technology or economics or trade. So how do you see, like, there is also a concern in a section of India that as China is building this dam in Arunachal Pradesh, that is a firstly sensitive state from environmental and ecological point of view, and China has made a claim on it. So in case of a conflict with China, will China weaponize this dam? So there are concerns, like, if you address it.
Well, the talks are happening between the countries over a period. Both Indian side and Chinese side actively wants to solve this for a long time in an amicable manner, especially the data sharing information. In fact, India is buying the data of water flow from China for a large quantity of money has also been spent and getting it regularly. But the problem comes when the data sets being sold to India are stopped when there is a standoff between the countries. And then there's different reasons which are given for this, temporary negligence to the data, just because it has claimed that there's flood in the region and the existing monitoring stations are washed away and so on. However, this seems to be unjustifiable to a side which is expecting water data in a honest way. And China has also established set of rules and regulations, especially to protect environment and to monitor environment and so on. But the question comes in, or the fear comes in, when whether it is strictly implayed on its existing dams, or those rules are not applicable to their ambitious projects. Since this project is much needed for the Chinese country, and it can be used for dual purpose, and it has a dual purpose, can be weaponized against India. So that's why the fear is, given the track record of how China has behaved with their transboundary nations in other basins, and how we can expect the scenario given the standoff between our countries, the fear has increased multiple fold. Now, the question of whether it would be used as a weapon against India, I would see in a given context, nobody would like to do that directly. But scientifically, there's a possibility. You can always say, if I think about disaster, any disaster which triggers based on that, it is very hard to prove it all happens because of a particular dam which is built. Or if any of the pattern which has changed, it's hard to distinguish between the impact due to climate change and the impact created based on this dam. And if a water is released in a unconventional way, when I say unconventional way, if a flash of water has been released in summer where we expect there's less quantity of water on the plain, so if that has happened, the practices which is associated in the lower region will completely get collapsed, and because of that you will lose both lives and will have an impact on economy as well. So these are the fears associated with it. Now, to combat this, what we require is very strong geopolitical relationship with China on this matter, because as you said, it's not about the people living in China and people living in India, because it may not be an interest of China, because they have thousands of people, little amount of people living in the top of this dam region, whereas millions of people are living in India and Bangladesh. So however, it should be looked as a comprehensive system, in as a nexus of multiple things which can be associated with the water, and it has to be sorted out peacefully. The efforts are taken at Indian side as well. India is also constructing a bigger dam in Arunachal Pradesh in order to combat if in case a huge water has been released, or to meet its own renewable energy potential, also renewable energy requirements also. Now, this is all given in place. We have to wait and see how the governments respond to this big dam projects in a diplomatic way, and by considering the lives of people and ecology of the region.
Thanks, Nitya, for this fascinating information about this upcoming dam about which not much is known. Like, if you look at internet or any other sources, like the informations are very far and few. So I hope it will give some food for thought for our listener also. And thanks for your insight. With this, we'll end today's podcast.
Thank you, Kingshu. Thanks for giving the opportunity. And for more information, readers can go through our publication in substack.com. It is known as Takshashila Geospatial Bulletin. And we are writing interesting facts about different aspects which has an strategic affairs related to India. And you can stay tuned. And once again, thanks to you and thanks to viewers for listening. Thank you.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.